Hello and welcome to OMD Educates. Today I'll be focusing on cancer screening. My name is Katie Peter and I will be taking you through this demonstration. During today's demonstration, I will be using Oscar EMR test environment with no real patient PHI. Cancer screening can help detect cancers at an early stage when there's a better chance of successful treatment. Running these reports regularly and proactively reaching out to patients assists in supporting screening efforts. Now, let's begin. From the main Oscar screen, select Report. When the report window presents, select Demographic Report tool. You need to create a demographic set to run the Ontario Prevention Report against. Select the criteria such as the age in which you are wishing to run the report against, the sex of the patient, as well as the provider. You will then wish to select the criteria of the demographics that you wish to appear in columns for your demographic report set that you're going to run. After you've selected this criteria, at the bottom of the selection, you're going to write in the name of the report that you are wishing to map against. After you've done this, you're going to go ahead and click Save Query. After you've saved the query, go ahead and run the query. This will pull up the list of patients that meets that criteria, as well as present the columns in which you've selected to present. This is good because we can actually cross-reference this number and associate it back to the Ontario Preventions Report. Now that you have created the patient set, you're ready to run the Ontario Preventions Report. The Ontario Preventions Report is a tool used to track the prevention progress. This being said, this report only includes patients that have a rostered status associated to them in the EMR. It is based on provincial guidelines. To run the preventions report, we first need to choose the patient set in which we've created. After we've chose the patient set that we've created the criteria for, we're going to query the preventions. Seeing how we're using PAP, I'm selecting PAP. I can leave this as of the date of which I'm going to run this query, or I could backdate it to run the report from earlier within the year, say from April 1st. Once I've gone ahead and set this all up, I just have to hit Submit in order for the preventions report to run. Once you've run the Ontario Preventions Report query, you will be provided a list of patients. This will give you a multitude of different information in regards to the patient set and the preventative measure in which you've chosen. From here, you're able to get the lists of patients, their names, their statuses, their month since last procedure, and their last procedure date, potentially even their last contact method. You'll also notice that there is a color-coded system in regards to different statuses that are part of the preventions. I'll go over the statuses further in detail as we enter the patient's e-chart to manage these preventions. After running and reviewing the Ontario Preventions Report, you may wish to open the patient's record to manage the prevention. You can open the patient's record by going to the demographic numbers column and selecting the demographic that you wish to open the patient's chart for. This will open the patient details information area, where then you can select e-chart to open the patient's record. Once opening the patient's record, you're able to then modify and manage the patient's prevention from the top left-hand corner of the record in the preventions area, clicking the plus sign. Once clicking the plus sign, it will have a list of preventions that are recommended for the patient, as well as quick links to the prevention in which we wish to manage, as well as a legend of those colors and what they are meaning to the prevention in which you are managing. I'm simply going to click on PAP. In the PAP area, this is where I would look at managing this patient's preventions. It's automatically set to be completed and pending. In here, I can also note whether or not this had been completed externally, change the date in which it had been completed externally from the calendar, as well as the provider in which it may have been performed by if it was internally, and or you could select it from the bottom other. And then, of course, myself, as this fake physician has been set as the creator, but I could write in somebody else's name, or if a nurse had been looking to manage this, we could write their name in here. This is also where we would actually state that the patient had refused to have the PAP performed, or potentially whether or not they had been ineligible. For both the refused and the ineligible, we can write down in the comments area why we would potentially be wishing to have, this noted that they had refused. Potentially they're not sexually active and that's why they're not eligible. In regards to the results, when the results come back or when we've performed it, we can actually have that the result is pending. If the result is pending, that's great. This is the way that it is set up to be. If not, we can select that the patient had a normal PAP, or maybe they potentially had an abnormal PAP. We also have the availability to write other and write in a reason. Now, if we have a patient that has had an abnormal PAP and we're wishing to potentially set up next date for this patient, as they may not fall into the regular preventative screening schedule. So we can set a next date. So let's say that this patient needed to have PAP done in 6 months. We can select the date and we can state the reason why this patient is needing to have this PAP completed again. Once we've selected and or written in the reason why, we would simply collect or prevent it as saved. Now, although we did set a set next date, the prevention runs on a schedule that pertains to each one of the preventions by the guidelines that are set. So it will not catch that this patient had an abnormal result within that screening period. So there are queries that are able to be run by the set next date so that you can have these patients fall into that list. Thank you for joining the OMD Educate session today. Other EMRs have similar report functions in them. I hope you found this session fruitful and informative. Maybe you found that one gold nugget. We have more sessions available to join. If you require any further assistance or access to tools, or maybe a hands-on one-on-one session with one of our peer leaders or practice advisors, please reach out. We look forward to connecting with you again soon.